Welcome to ABN. We're live in the studio. We have a very special guest with us in the studio. Imagine being born without arms or legs. How would that affect your life? Would you be willing to serve the Lord with all that you have, given your situation? Tonight we have very special guest, Brother Nick. Welcome to the show, Brother Nick.
Thank you so much.
We are very excited to hear what the Lord has placed on your heart and to hear your testimony and to hear your upbringing so that we can inspire our audience. What we'll do today, we'll hear Brother Nick's testimony, and then we will go into what this world teaches us about dealing with problems and pain and what the consequences is of the secular approach to solving the pain on the outside versus solving it from the source. And then we'll go into what the causes of that pain is and what the solution is. And with that, without any further ado, I want to introduce you again to the show. Welcome to the show. Tell us a little about yourself. Tell us how you grew up, where you were born, how old you are. Just a little introduction so that our audience gets to know you a little better.
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me here, and hello to all of you out there. Some people have seen me on YouTube, some haven't. It's been such a wonderful journey of one day at a time, trusting that God has a plan.
Yeah.
And it was difficult for my parents to have the situation of being born without arms and legs. No one knew, no one knew what kind of life I was going to live. No one knew if I was going to even walk. And so just a lot of different thoughts and tribulations as a child as well. Seeing everybody else with arms and legs, but not me. And so I had a lot of questions, and it took quite a while before I could be thankful. Doing your best requires you to first of all be thankful, but it's always easier to be angry for what you don't have. And that's why I want people to be inspired that no matter what situation you're in, that you can be thankful for what you still have.
Yeah, very good. Thank you so much. And tell us a little about your parents. When you were born, were they expecting this? Did they expect this? How did they respond? Did they trust the Lord with what was given to them? And tell us a little about that.
Yeah, no, definitely it was a blessing for me to have the parents that God gave me. I was actually the eldest sibling, still am the eldest sibling, of 3 in the family. My brother's 24, my sister's 21. They have arms and legs. And it was very difficult for my parents to even consider at first to have a second child because they don't know what happened with the first. The doctors didn't know what was wrong, and it was something that my parents continued to help me to understand that no matter what's going on, that God does have a plan, and that requires faith. Yeah. To believe something that you don't see is faith, and to be sure of things hoped for. And the Lord says He has a hope plan in the future for each and every one of us. And sometimes that feels so far away. For me, my parents were always encouraging me, but there were many times where I would cry in their shoulders, and they wouldn't understand my pain. They say everything's going to be okay, but I'm thinking, how? How is everything okay? Yeah. But they were always there to, plant seeds of truth and hope into me. As I grew up in school, and my mom always said, Nick, you don't know what you can achieve until you try it. And so I learned how to type with my foot and write with my foot and swim and now golf and fish and travel around the world to be the hands and feet of love without arms and legs. And that only God can do. And people ask my parents, how did you raise a son without limbs? And they said, one step at a time with God. Yeah. And so that was, with Jesus Christ by their side, they knew that one day at a time, God's grace is sufficient. We don't understand it, but God has not forgotten our son.
Amen. And tell us a little, what did the doctors say when you were born? Did they, was this something that they expected or anticipated, or what was the response to your parents?
Well, actually, they had 2 ultrasounds at 20 and I think 32 weeks. And they did not know that I was going to be born without arms and legs. It was a given that every baby is born with arms and legs, 10 fingers and 10 toes. Mm-hmm. So it was actually a shock. Mm-hmm. And my mum, being a nurse, knew actually what to do and what not to do in her pregnancy, but she also had a feeling that something was wrong. Even though no one told her anything, she had a feeling that something, she's a little scared. Something doesn't, not that something felt wrong, but just in her spirit, she had a feeling that something's going to go wrong.
Yeah.
And so she had no alcohol, no, painkillers, no nothing that any woman would not do, in a pregnancy, making sure that I would be safe and healthy. Yeah. And so when I was born, the doctors told my mom and dad that I had phocomelia. Now what that means is simply a medical term that says born without arms and legs for no medical reason, or born with deformities for no reason at all. So they don't know why, and they still don't know today.
Okay. Tell us a little about when you were younger. You have a little story about when you were about 8 years old, about your trust in the Lord and maybe that incident and how you used that to learn from that and maybe grow as far as your calling in the Lord. Tell us what happened when you were 8.
Yeah, when I was 8 years old, I actually told my mum that I wanted to commit suicide. And she said, why? And I just couldn't, I couldn't find the words to express what I felt. And what I felt was I was just a burden to my parents. And, normally in life you go to school, you go to university, you get a job, you get married, you have a family. I, at age 8, looked, into my future. I'm thinking, I'm not going to go to college. I'm not going to get a job. Not going to get married. Not going to have kids. And I'm thinking, even if I cannot have now the simple things of life, I'm just going to enjoy what I have for now. But even what I have now is not good. I had nothing to look forward to, nothing to be thankful for right now either. And that was the mindset that I had. I was in a dark place with no light at the end of the tunnel. And, my mum said, it's okay, God's going to be with you. And I got angry as I went through age 8, 9, and 10 at God. Because, I'd always ask my parents, what happened? And they say, we don't know. They say, only God knows. So I asked God, why did this happen? And He doesn't speak to me. And, I thought it would be a wonderful idea if God gave me arms and legs. And you know how God says in the Word, He has a plan. Yeah. We ask God sometimes for a plan B. Yeah. And He doesn't say anything. And I asked God for a plan B. Lord, can you give me arms and legs? Yeah. And if you give me arms and legs, then I will show the world that you are alive and that you love us all and you never make a mistake and you answer prayer and you never forget us. And I heard nothing. Yeah. So I said, okay, God, look, I know that I'm a sinner and I know that I need forgiveness of my sins. I know that there is something missing in my soul, but because I was so angry at Him, He didn't answer me. And so I said, God, I'm not going to give my life to you until you answer me why. And so feeling that my only hope was God, but God was not there for me, I went to the bathtub at age 10, and I asked Mum and Dad to fill up the tub with water. And I think it was my mum or my dad, I can't remember. But I went into the bathtub and turned over 3 times when they were not there and tried to drown myself. Yeah. And the first 2 times I thought I was, helping them by not being a burden to them anymore. But the 3rd time that I turned over, I realized that I was leaving pain, a lifetime of pain on their shoulders. And so I loved my parents more than I loved myself. And I decided to stay around. Yeah. And
that's good.
And
we're happy.
Thank God, seriously, thank God for that.
Yeah.
And this is the message that you may not see hope. Yeah. Today you may not see hope. People might be offended if I say, God can use your broken pieces to turn into something beautiful. Yeah. How? How can you tell me, Nick, that with the death of my family member, how can you tell me that me being raped at 14 is good? How can you tell me that any good can come from this? Right. That's the hope in God. First of all, He knows how much your heart can bear. Second of all, when we pray for a miracle, okay, now obviously we all have different pain. But when you're praying for a physical change in circumstance or surrounding, right? I guess rape is a little bit different here, but what I want to say is this, is when you have suffering in your life, okay, and something that doesn't change on the outside, God is the only person, the maker of the heart, is the only one who can change the heart. And so first of all, to know that God never makes a mistake. There is evil out there, not from God, but from Satan. And as we ask God to come into our life, to heal us from our past, or heal us from our sickness or disease, I've seen people being healed. I've seen blind people seeing, deaf people hearing, lame people walking. And I have a pair of shoes in the closet just in case God says yes to me. But what I know is this, is that God never makes a mistake. He says in the Word that He formed me in my mother's womb. He knew my name before the earth began. He has more precious thoughts of me than all the grains of sand in the world. So I just want you to know today that God has not forgotten you. He hears your prayers, and He heard my prayers. And I thank God that He gave me faith to trust in Him later on, 5 years later, to say, God, here I am. If you give me arms and legs, great. If you don't give me arms and legs, great. Why? Because God is God, and He does know best. And today I can look back in my life and see all my broken pieces, my depression, my discouragement, my even thoughts of suicide. All that pain is very, very big. But when I see how people, after they hear me speak, and they come and give me a hug and they cry and say, thank you, thank you, thank you, now I feel I can have peace and trust and faith in God. You can't put a price on that. Arms and legs can't give you that happiness, but to be a miracle for someone else when God doesn't give you a miracle, it's wonderful.
Yeah, and just to go back a little to what you were saying a little earlier, you said when you were 10 years old, you said, Lord, if you give me arms and legs, I will go out and I will represent you, essentially.
Right.
That was when you were 8 or 9. Let's say that somebody here is saying, you know what, Nick, they're in their 40s or 50s or 30s, you know, they're a little older, and they're going through something that's so unimaginable in their life, and they somehow, they wish they were like you, they wish they could release it, they wish they could surrender their life to God and their problem to God and have that sort of faith to move forward and hope that God will use them, you know, to represent Him. But they're lacking the faith. What would you say to somebody like that, that's a little older, that maybe can't seem to separate themselves from their problems and their pain? How would you tell them to move forward like that?
It's a beautiful question. You know, John chapter 9, when I read this, the first 3 verses, at age 15, I saw how Jesus went through a village and saw a man who was born blind. And no one knew why this man was born blind. And Jesus said, it was done so that the works of God may be revealed through him. Why did Jesus heal the blind man? Did He just give him that just so he can have his sight? No, so that then you believe that Jesus is the Son of God, that Jesus actually is the healer. That's why He did what He did. That's why He loved people. He wanted people to know that He is the way, the truth, and life, and that He can bring you through whatever you're going through right now. Now, we see, you know, many miracles in our lives, and maybe you're waiting for your miracle. First of all, you don't need a physical miracle to happen before you can share the love of God. You don't need arms and legs to love God. You don't need arms and legs to love your neighbor as yourself. You don't need arms and legs to stand in front of the gates of hell and redirect traffic. You don't need arms and legs for that. Now, if you believe that God can't use you and you're concentrating on your pain, couple things. First thing is to know that I don't know what your pain is, but God does. God understands the language of your tears. And in my life, I realized that if God can use a donkey to talk, then He can do anything. You know, if God can use a man without arms and legs to be His hands and feet, then God can use you. It's not about what you can do. It's about trusting in God and having your faith and asking God to help your unbelief. And second of all, what I want to tell you is whatever broken pieces you have in your life, that you can be used by God for someone else. You know that saying where if you don't have a friend, be a friend? You know, when you don't get a miracle, you can still be a miracle for someone else. Of what? Of love. Whether God gives me arms and legs or not, that's not the miracle. The miracle I want to share with the world is salvation. The miracle I want to share is my heart was broken and now it's healed. What's the point of having arms and legs when you're broken on the inside? It's not about the outside. It's all about the inside. It's about peace. It's about love, and it's about joy. And if you happen to 10 years from now run into someone who is going through that same situation,